Hey everybody, this is Mr. Cyber here. We have another show today with the fantastic guest. We have Susan Dyer with us to tell her near-death experience story. Hello, Susan. Are you there?
Hi, guys.
Hey, Susan.
I'm here, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Elijah. Mr. Cyber, you're amazing.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to have you on because I know you have a very interesting story to tell, and I know a lot of people have not heard it, and I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I figured why not give you the platform to actually tell everything you want to tell. And I was looking at probably you starting at the beginning, but I'm going to essentially let you run the show from here. Because I know you probably have a lot to talk about. And of course, I'll interject and with some questions as well. But where would you like to start with this?
Well, I think I want to run through like my near-death experience and leave room. Like what I'm getting from my guides is questions will be a big part of this.
Yeah.
So I'll run us through what happened. And then maybe you and I could volley back and forth with any questions, because I have a feeling you'll probably embody the questions that your audience would have too.
Yeah. Well, I will let you proceed to lead the way. So can we can we go back to the very beginning of when this started, what your first experience was?
The very beginning. I forgot. I was born clairvoyant. Yeah. So I came in, there's a phrase that's used like in spiritual communities. Like I was born able to see energy and beings from other dimensions. I've always lived multidimensionally. I've always been able to see angels and beings and ley lines of energy. And I literally came in what's called top down. Mm-hmm. So in like the Indian tradition, for example, when you're developing spiritually, clairvoyance, which is what I was born with, which is the ability to see, clairvoyance, and clairaudience, which is the ability to hear, those are considered cities. And they're kind of the top forms or expressions of one's spiritual development. And most people do not come in top down. Like I kind of came in upside down. And when you do that, there's always a core reason for doing that. And so I wouldn't understand that for a long time to come. But so essentially clairvoyance as a kid is like the most terrifying existence you could ever imagine. It's like, I just lived like wild-eyed and like bewildered and constantly afraid.
Now if I can ask you really quick.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, did you feel out of place with this because you felt different and you really had no one you could explain this to?
Yes. I hated myself by kindergarten. I mean, it was that difficult to deal with. So just to like paint a picture, and I want to be really clear, I love my parents dearly, and we've grown so much over the years. But growing up, my parents were like super, super Catholic and super Republican. And I was going to Sunday school and church and studying for the sacraments. And every night I'd come into my parents' room, same story, crying hysterically, describing whatever it was I was seeing that night. And I would see all this stuff during the day too, but it's different when you're in the daylight and people around you. I didn't feel I didn't feel as threatened, but at night, I mean, I just lived in mortal terror of the night, because I was alone in my room, and I was seeing things so detailedly that I had no idea what I was seeing. You know, the only kinds of energies I was clear on as a child was from watching movies. Is I was able to see, you know, other dimensional beings or extraterrestrials. Like I could identify that, but all the other things, I had no idea what they were. And actually, we talked about this on the phone. I will mention this because it's like, to me, one of the funniest, most ridiculous. My life has just been a string of like rock bottoms and ridiculousness. But my parents were really hell bent on getting me to stop talking about it. And like every night, it was like, "You're not seeing that. Go back in your room."
Yeah.
And there came a point where there was, like how Pigpen had that cloud following him, there was this one energy that was way different than all the other energies I would see. I could not see through it, first of all. And it was so slow moving. And the other ones were like these fantastic, like shades of neon, and they were transparent and they moved so quickly. And this thing was like crimson colored, totally opaque, couldn't see through it, moved so slowly and followed me just like Pigpen's cloud every day.
Wow.
And I was like, that was the last thing I talked openly about, because I was desperate to figure out what this was. And so this is where the ridiculousness comes in. You know, my parents, you know, were of no help. They did not know what to do with me. And my church was where I pieced together an inconceivable answer. And I realized, like, oh my God, it must be Satan. It's Satan. Like, it must be. And I was like, I was so young, and I already knew that I was weird, and I felt crazy, because we orient our self-perception around the capacity and opinion and experiences of those who raise us. And for me, that was mom, dad, and the church. And so I felt crazy, because if my parents were telling me this wasn't real, then what was this entire world I'm living in 24/7? And then to piece that together and think the devil is literally stalking me, it added this deeper, darker level to my self-image. And it was really bad. I felt devastated at such a young age, and I thought to myself, I must be really, really bad to have the devil stalking me. But I couldn't figure out why. But I was like, but it doesn't matter. It's the truth.
Well,
like, why else would that be? Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, so unfortunately for you, the boogeyman was real, and this wasn't the boogeyman. This was spiritual demons.
Well, actually, no. So this is the funny part. And yes, that was so funny. Yes, my entire life has been filled with boogeymen. It's very true.
Yeah.
But so when I was 41, this is insane. I thought that my whole life. And I did not find out until I was 41 that was Archangel Michael. It was not the devil. It was Archangel Michael. And, you know, I have all of my psychic faculties, like clear hearing, clear seeing, clear feeling, clear knowing, channeling, all of it. But back then, I only had seeing. And I was like, you know, would have been nice if somebody could have just like thrown me a bone and been like, FYI, it's not the devil, it's Archangel Michael. But that was the truth of it. I didn't find it out till I was 41 and could be, finally start understanding and making sense of everything I was seeing. And the reason he was appearing to me as this deep red color, and for those of you listening with any interest in starseeds, or if you think that you've always felt out of place or that you might be extrasensory, I will say, Archangel Michael has a real penchant for protecting sensitive children. And I had actually broken my energetic, it's called a horror line, which I did not know. I never knew what these things were called until I Googled them way later. But if you could see yourself clairvoyantly, you'd see yourself as a light body and kind of like as a bead. And then there's this string of energy, and one part of it comes through your root chakra and anchors you to Mother Earth. And then the top one comes out your crown and connects you with your divinity and your eternal self. And so I had become so afraid of my earthly life. I did not realize this until decades later. I had actually breached my own horror line. And so he was presenting to me in that color, that traditional root chakra color, because he was with me every day, trying to ground me, which is the opposite of what I thought I wanted. But he knew that the only safety and security I'd be really able to experience would require doing the exact opposite of what I'd want to do.
Yeah.
And even to this day, my root chakra is still, it's this chrome, platinum color. And if you could see my horror line going into the earth, I know this sounds so crazy, but it's actually a cobalt blue triangle, extension leg built by Archangel Michael. He reconstructed it. So I could, back, when I was an adult and I came to peace with all this and I came to understand it, he literally constructed me like a peg leg, reattachment to the earth. And I guess when I realized that I thought that was the devil, and I knew my parents were that's not happening. That's why I say I hated myself by kindergarten and vowed never to speak of it again. And
yeah, well, you know what? If I was in your shoes, I completely understand your point of view. That's a hard position to be put in, especially as a child.
Yeah. Well, that silly phrase, I don't even ever heard it. Why did God make babies cute?
Yeah.
So the parents wouldn't throw them out the window, basically.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know what you mean.
It just, okay. So I really I lived with such deep fraudulence for decades, stifling this incredibly integral part of my life. And that is why I magnetized so many dark nights of the soul, just one after another. I was living in complete fraudulence. And part of that also was involved in my marriage. And when that marriage broke up and the circumstances around it seemed to confirm my worst fear, which is that here I am again, still as an adult. And when people find out who I really am, they leave. And so it was a pretty shattering experience, and my body fell apart. My body fell apart, really. I thought I was coming out with onset dementia. I didn't know where I was in my own room. Everything was happening. I was laying on the bed. I should know where I am. I have my shoes off. I'm on someone's bed reading. What's happening to me? So my body was screaming for my attention about the upcoming dissolution of my marriage. And it shattered me so greatly, like kind of learning the other half or the truth of things for the last 14 years, that I went into, at that point, that was my, I don't know, probably 5th dark night of the soul, but it was 10 months and it did not budge. Yeah. And when I say God, I do also want to say I absolutely am not religious at all, and I just need a word to use, and God basically,
of course,
is a convenience. But I honor, I want to just make that clear, because even people who don't believe in God at all, I respect them immensely. But after that, there's 10 months of a dark night of the soul that did not budge. Well, I was really, it was a crisis of faith for me too at that point. I felt like, I did feel like, God, why have you abandoned me? I haven't had even an incremental change. And then fast forward to 2017, that's when I actually died. I had chronic Lyme disease, and the year before, at best, I had a cane. Most of the year, I couldn't walk at all. There was a brief period where I could use a walker, but at that point, I was so ill. I was draining 3 IV bags in my body every day, and I would climb off the couch, army crawl to the kitchen, make PB&Js on the floor for my kids, for the day, and line them up against the wall and climb back to the couch. I was so ill. And it was worsening and worsening. My friends were telling me, you're going to die. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then the day came, and from black to white, was I am going to die, and it's going to be tonight. It was a very calm knowing.
Yeah.
And I tried everything I could to stay. I did. And then crawling, my friends wouldn't leave even. They kept calling the next one in because they knew too. And finally, when the last one left, I was thank God, my kids aren't here. They're with their dad. I can finally, and guilt-free, go upstairs and die in peace. And as I was crawling upstairs, my guides threw me this game-changing spitball. They were like, there's one more chance. You have one more chance. And I'm literally mid-crab crawl on all fours up the stairs. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what is there? And they said, you have to get out of bed. You have to get out of, I'm sorry. No. They said, you've got to get out of your body tonight and get help. And I know your viewers, won't be surprised by this, but, and I love the mission of your channel. I'm so with you. I felt we're fellow patriots. I'm serious. It's super important, I think.
Well, thank you.
But I've astral traveled since I was a kid. It's a normal part of my life, but I said, I can't do that. I've never done that on command. I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. And they just said, when you get into bed, line yourself up along the edge of the bed at the very edge.
Yeah. And
when you're in that half in, half out state of sleep, just roll right off the edge of the bed and you'll be free.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. What I'm saying? Even to this day, when source or a guide gives me such a blanketly, unconfucius, simple answer, I always throw a party of gratitude. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how to do this. Well, this is what you do. It's thank you. Why all the Confucius, like everything else seems to be, but when things really matter, I'm always given practical, concise answers. And so I did exactly that. And I do want to add, because I'm really proud of this, I was terrified because they told me what to do, but like, yeah, I was like, even if this works,
yeah,
I literally was like, what do I do? And I, the best I could think of was maybe I could find like a random angel floating about and ask for like, a bit of a dollop of help to just like help me just at least not die. Like some kind of like cosmic AAA program. Like if I can just like find some, I didn't know what to expect.
Well, you know what? And without interrupting you, Susan, it's almost like,
oh yeah,
this is the only analogy I can think of. It's like, okay, you're like 6 years old. You're getting your training wheels off and they're like, you just get on the bike and just go. They give you instructions, but you're like, it's not just that easy. I need guidance.
Totally.
That's the only thing I can recognize this as.
Yeah. I think so too. And as I've, grown in my abilities and understanding, it really is that way. We're always given what we need for the next step. The trick is to become comfortable.
Yeah.
In the duration of those uncertainties. That's something that's really hard for us and most humans to like not understand how something's going to turn out, or like anything with uncertainty. We like, especially our brains, our minds likes consistency, proven results, and repetitiveness. So,
exactly.
I was like, this is really scary to me. But this happened today, I wouldn't be scared at all. I'd know better. I'd know I wouldn't have any idea what to do, but as we go, it will be provided. And so I rolled out of bed and immediately manifested. It looked like a gray smear, but I knew it was a tunnel of gray looking light that was moving so fast, it looked like a smeared blur. And so I was standing there in my astral body, which feels like you're totally in your regular body. I was looking at this thing and I was like, you've got to like angle your way in. And then I knew I'd be like ripped away somewhere and I probably have no control over it.
So I got a question.
Like, okay.
So is this similar to the tunnel that other people talk about seeing?
Not at all. And I do think there's a difference to be made with my NDE versus others in that I co-created it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what to expect, but like I was taking directions. And so I angled into this gray smear, no recollection of anything, but seemingly instantly arrived at the place that people call the void. And the thing that was interesting that I understand now was I was still in the chariot of Susan Dyer, of that personality. And Susan Dyer, at that age, 41, was still just as terrified as the dark as I'd ever been. So to pop out in a place that is indescribably like velvet, like wet velvet black, and deafeningly silent, in that moment, my panic was absolutely like, I cannot explain in words my panic. It was like that moment was the worst fear of my life.
I bet.
And Yeah. But this is the deal. I do know where I went. I went back to the womb. That place, that space is like the 0 point. You and I were talking about canvases before.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like basically the hub of the divine feminine. It's the space, it's the space of God's canvas just before he presses outward onto it in form. But I didn't know that. I just freaked out and like slammed my astral eyeballs shut and just intuitively just said like, God, please take me somewhere safe and good. That's all I could think to say. And I was, again, like when you are on the other side, there is no linear time. So a thought is instantly manifested.
So time is essentially non-existent on the other side. Time is irrelevant.
It's only relevant to planets like Earth.
Okay.
You know, when like we are on this planet, and it really is, as I've like kind of gotten from my guides, this is a school of learning by emotion.
Yeah.
Dealing with the kaleidoscope, the incredibly massive kaleidoscope of human emotions. And so when I said that, I immediately found myself floating in blazing of all shades of gold, these rays. And I remember, I remember such specifics. I remember thinking, this should be frying my eyeballs right now.
Of course.
And I thought at the time, God must be like super dimming himself. Like, this is insane.
You know, God was only probably showing you 0.0001% of his brightness.
I can't even imagine, right? It's like, it's unimaginable. Source, God, the compound of all, whatever you want to call it, I can't even begin.
Yeah.
But what happened in that exchange, the first part, was integral. Immediately, we began our exchange, and it felt kind of like a plug being plugged into the socket.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question posed was, do you want to stay here or return home? And then I flipped out. I was so scared God wasn't going to believe me. So I threw up like an IMAX-sized photo of my son. And I was like, no, God, I want to go home. That's the whole point of this trip. And then I felt like I needed to show him how serious I was. So at that point, I started like hand over hand yanking on my silver cord. And I remember thinking like, Susan, what the F are you doing? Like how long would that take? Like if I'm trying to return my body by hand over hand, like towing myself back, you could be like dead before you got there. I was thinking how crazy it was, and how like I was just so afraid. But the reason I kept my personality for this experience was to be able to experience it as a human, to describe it to other humans, and being completely, I guess, steeped, or like, I was floating in that unnameable energy, and I viscerally felt what it is made of. And that was the most life-changing experience of my life. And I remember thinking, such love, such deep love should feel heavy and like dense, like fudge, I would think. But this love, which is impossible to put into words,
mm-hmm.
I realized the human word that best described what God felt like. It wasn't love. It was actually freedom.
Yeah.
And
Can I get a quick question really quick, Susan?
Yeah. Oh my God. Of course. Yes.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
So this place you were in, well, first question was, you were in your spiritual form, correct?
Yeah.
And
mm-hmm.
were you able to see like your arms, legs, or was it just completely spirit? I mean, it was you in yourself, exactly how you are now, but in a spirit.
I have no idea what I would have actually looked like.
Yeah.
And I never bothered to look because that was so, like, my mission was so targeted. Like
you weren't worried about your
that.
arms and everything because everything else, the experience wise, was just amazing.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't, but I could feel my entire body.
Wow.
You know, like your light body is like your spiritual skeleton. You know what I'm saying? So
correct.
I felt absolutely embodied, even though it was astral. And God, source, whatever, we had this exchange that revolutionized everything for me, because I kind of thought of God. I've been studying spirituality across disciplines for 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And by that point, I come to think of God as like the prime creator energy, which obviously is a loving force. But I had no idea that he knew me so intimately. He knew me and every cell in my body. Like,
you're his child.
It makes, I mean, like, I'm not kidding, but to the point where I realized something that felt so controversial. It actually took me several months to even go into meditation with it.
Yeah.
What I realized, and now I base my life around this, I realized in that exchange, which was both like super intimate and impossibly sweeping, I realized that we were one and the same. There was absolutely no difference. I was just a minuscule dollop of this one singular, universal compound. Like, I am God. You are God. We are made of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's that is what we are. It's not, I don't know.
I'm sure it's really hard to put into words because it's such an amazing experience. Words don't justify.
I know, but you know what? I made a series of promises to God. And this is like where I really began to panic.
Yeah.
I promised directly, and this is exact words, to live transparently, which I knew meant I had to come out of the closet, come out of the spiritual closet, which was like my worst fear come true.
Yeah.
Because it's like, me, like, as we thought, like, I'd always been considered quirky and weird.
Oh,
and
same here.
Like, oh my God.
Same here.
Yeah, I know. We were like fellow nerd power. Like, I know. I just love it.
Yeah.
But I thought I promised, I said, I will live transparently. I said, I will go all in. I promise. But you're just going to have to tell me what to do about it. And then immediately after, this exchange, I knew I'd made those promises, which were going to completely eviscerate my former life.
Yeah.
And then Jesus appeared, like looking like totally hot, handsome Jesus in an off-white, belted robe.
So hold on, I'll stop you right there. You saw Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It went from me being a psycho, like pulling my silver cord, trying to get back to my body, to then immediately just standing right across from Jesus. And he lifted out both his palms to me, and he asked me, do you want to get better? And that's when I was like, oh my God, I grabbed his hand.
Awesome.
And I started shouting at the top of my lungs, I'm going to get better as fast as I can. I'm going to get better as fast as I can. I shouted that like over and over. And as I did that, we went flying while holding hands through the most glorious landscape of just every shade of green imaginable. And for those who may not know, green is, correlates with the heart chakra and with healing. Like when I see Archangel Raphael, he presents as literally like neon green. Like that's how integral that color is to healing. And we did that together. And then this is the part I just admitted. It was kind of insane. I promised to live transparently. And then I just realized after having another set of near-death experiences, that you promised God you live transparently, and you never told the truthful ending of your story. And I was like, what the hell? How did I miss that? So I just actually released a video of the true ending of my story, which I intentionally omitted for fear of judgment. Because to me, the extraterrestrial line, like that, I felt like I was going to go to my grave with, because that's when people think of like tin hats, trailers, and like living in the desert, you know? And it was a line. I was like, I can't go there. But what happened truthfully was that after we did that, Jesus asked me,
well, you know what, Susan, I don't mean to interrupt you. Before you go there, I want you to make you feel better, because anything God does is not impossible. And I think even though you were afraid or hesitant to reveal, some more information, I personally think, God doesn't immediately expect it. He wants you to think about it, relate to it first, understand it, and then when it's time, he will let you know when it's time to release that information. Oh, so you may proceed. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
So agree with you. No, I completely agree. And that has been my experience. I mean, ever since. And so I like, we're so on the same page. And he asked me, but you know what? The synchronicity of us talking is super important. Yeah. Because just last night I made a really breakthrough realization. And I realized why God felt like freedom above all. And I realized it was because God is God. Like that energy, if you cut it in half, it would just be one thing. Like when you cut a tree, it's tree all the way through. Yeah. And so is God. And I had this exact thought while merged with God. And this video, I have a video called There Is No Sin. I have like that video enrages so many people. I'm like constantly going in there trying to like buffer people's complete resistance to the idea that there is no sin. Because when I was merged with him, I literally thought to myself, I could have just murdered 10 people and I'd be embraced in the very same way. God is immovably God.
Yeah.
No matter what. God simply is. And the love.
God is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, the end,
unconditional.
and he is complete love.
Yeah, but it's conditionless.
Correct.
And I was in the presence of conditionless love for the first time in my life. And that's why it felt like freedom.
Wow.
And that was a really important realization for me, because, and I've meditated on this, and I've asked, is it ever really possible to experience unconditional love from human to human? Because we necessarily have our chariot of our personality and ego. It's a requisite for incarnating. And because of that, like, even if my child murdered someone, I would love him still.
Oh, of course. Of course.
But I would absolutely.
You don't like the action, but you still love your child.
No, but what I'm saying is it would still affect me. I would still be totally afraid of judgment from other parents and what people are thinking of me. Like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is true conditionless love. That's really only possible with God.
Of course.
And that's not a bad thing at all, because we can get very, very close to unconditional love with people. It involves becoming completely authentic, which takes a lot of ballsy, like, inner reflection.
Well, you know what? God wouldn't be God if he wasn't unconditional love.
Yes. Right. I mean, like, there was no reaction to anything I was saying. It was just the immovable, overwhelming, light as air, unflinching feeling of love that was so conditionless. It felt like freedom.
That is awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And I bet you felt a great... So I want to go back. So when you felt that, did you feel a sense of just relief?
No. I felt terror, because I knew that the core of my work was going to be centered around my realization that was hard for me to accept. It took me 6 months before I'd even bring it into meditation. Yeah. But that realization that we are, each of us, actually God. Like, I knew that was to be my focal message in whatever work I do. And the whole thing was terrifying. But then at the end of that portion of Jesus, he asked me, is there any other place you'd like to visit, before returning to your body? And I was like, yes. And I told him, I was like, I want to go to this certain ship. This is what I left out. And I think you're going to link to the video where I discussed this.
Correct. And before you continue really quick, I just want to let everybody know, down in description, I have linked Susan's YouTube channel and some more information below. So please check out those resources. She has a tremendous amount of videos that are very fascinating. So I just wanted to mention that. Please check out Susan Dyer's site.
Thank you. That means a lot. For real. Like, that's very kind of you. We're we're very, very much the same kind of nerd. I just love it. I really mean that. So I said I wanted to go to this ship because since I was little, I've been traveling to the same ship. and physically doing so, actually, at length as a child, but now I do it astrally. And every time I go, I would be on it, put on the same table. It's kind of like a stone, smooth, graphite colored table.
Yeah.
And it was like a dark room with kind of a spotlight around the table. And my mantis guide was always the one taking care of me. So I have a mantis guide. And this is also a note to any budding spiritualist. Don't ever get hung up on getting a name. A name doesn't mean anything. What means something is that you explore the energy and you kind of know what that energy stands for. That's the real message. The naming is just a human habit, like that we do, like to keep organized, just like time. Like we created time as like the Dewey Decimal System for living.
Exactly.
Because, you know, we need organization. But I wanted to go to Table Spaceship. I call him Table. Like I was 3. And that's always been my name for him. And if I can't pronounce his name anyway, it would just sound like really loud, screeching noises.
Yeah.
But like, so he's Table. And so Jesus and I flew up to the hull of a massive, massive ship. And this is so like nerdily cool. You will so like this. You know how like in the medieval days, everybody had like a shield with a coat of arms. That showed like, this is your house and the symbols of it and everything.
Correct.
And so by this one very inconspicuous door into this massive shuttle was this huge, extensive, detailed coat of arms. And it verified everything I need to know. Kind of like if you have a boat, it'll say like, you know, Goddess Athena, Siesta Key, Florida. Like it was like that, but way more detailed. It was kind of like its galactic address, like its mission, you know, the races on board, their intention, like it was like their call sheet. And so he had me read that. And I was like, yep, that's one. And then immediately I was inside the ship. I actually wanted to meet a guide I call Perry, because I knew Perry was not embodied. I know Perry is a light being, but I knew that if I requested to meet him under these circumstances, that somehow I'd be able to. And that would be like being able to finally like hug, like, you know, a longtime teddy bear, you know?
Definitely.
And so symbolically, this is all symbolic. You know, in that movie Contrast with Jodie Foster.
Oh, you know what? You know what? It's funny.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned Contact. That was the first.
Oh yeah, Contact.
Yeah, that was an absolutely amazing movie where they got the alien signal and they tried to decipher it, and then you know they ended up building this machine from the blueprints they received from the aliens to fall through a wormhole. So if anybody hasn't seen the movie Contact, by all means, go watch it.
Yeah, and I'll plug this, especially for you, Elijah, for real. You've got to read the book. It makes the movie look like a McDonald's Happy Meal.
Really?
Like oh my God, you will freak out. It is so much hugely nerdily. That book is one of my top 3 favorite books. But in that story, when she does land on the planet, you see this shadow, and like you can kind of tell it looks like a tentacled being is approaching. But when it
was her dad
fear,
eventually, wasn't it?
Her dad.
Yeah.
Yes. And she even confirms, like, you're not really my dad, are you? And he was like, no, I'm not. But again, like, our higher self's intention is never to scare. And a lot of times people don't even realize they're clairaudient, like clear hearing. A lot of times people don't even realize they are, because so often our guides use our own voice to speak to us. So we think we're thinking it, but it's really them, because they don't want to scare us or startle us. But if you want an easy trick to know if your thought was like divinely inspired or came from you, it's pretty cool, actually. Basically, when that realization came about the freedom and self-love thing, I was totally not thinking about that. I was washing dishes. I was doing something different. I hadn't thought about it in forever. And those are two very good clues that you have received, whatever thought that was. That was a divinely inspired bit of wisdom there. And so I ended up in this NASA gift shop, like from the 50s, is what it looked like.
Yeah.
And I was trying not to lose it, because I knew that the shop owner was Perry. And I was just trying not to speak out, because he was talking to another customer and I wanted to be polite.
Yeah.
And of course, it just like Jodie Foster, he manifested for my benefit as my version of an every dad. So like, if you put my dad's head on his body, that's exactly how he dressed on the weekends. On the weekends, he loved to like garden, and he put on these like dorky Wrangler jeans and a flannel shirt.
Yeah.
And he had kind of like a little dad belly. And
it's kind of like what I have.
Oh, well, I'm like, you don't have kids, do you? I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I have I know we're going off topic, but I got my wife and I have a 19-year-old daughter in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that growing up, I called my dad's tummy my pillow. It was like my favorite thing. So I was just going to say, if you have kids, they probably love it. Like I would always go and like lay on my dad's pillow.
Well, yeah, they love it. I don't love it. I'm trying to get rid of it, but it's easier to put it on than it is to take it off.
Sorry. That circumstances don't work. This is no longer serving my 19-year-old daughter. And it's annoying to me. Right. So there was Perry, and like from the neck up, was just like any other dad from who I grew up. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't my dad, but he manifested as my version of every dad.
Yeah.
And I got to, I waited, and then I went over and we hugged each other so hard and so long, which is like was a dream come true, just because he is a light. He is a light body. He doesn't come in form. But in that time space, in those conditions, he was able to. And it was just, I just like felt like my birthday, And after that exchange, that's when I came back to my body. I woke up the next morning, and I'd always have like either my cane or my walker, like immediately beside my bed. And I woke up, I sat up, and immediately looked at my cane and knew I wouldn't need it anymore. And over the next 5 days, I went from, death to unexplainable health.
Living miracle. That was a miracle right there.
Yeah, like even my blood, for example, they were about to start chelating my blood, meaning like drain me of my blood because it was so dangerously overloaded with iron.
Yeah.
And I remember my doctor being absolutely like astonished and like unsettled that there was zero iron in my blood. And it was actually kind of fun because he was kind of a stick in the mud. So I actually had a really good time. Sometimes I do this. It's a little naughty. But he's like, I don't understand this. I was like, well, that's because I died and I healed overnight. I was like, and he was like, okay. But it was a very satisfying moment.
That is, but you know what? I would have done the same thing too. I would have done it.
Hell yeah. I mean, I was like, if you really want to know, that is the deal.
Yeah. You know what? I would have said, Doc, thou shalt not lie.
Yeah, seriously. And he just he was so befuddled, which I'm used to. But and then actually I am so grateful not to have known this. But I had no idea that. If you look at the flow chart of a hero's journey, for example, I could see that my archetype was very much like a phoenix. My life had been a string of rock bottoms in every category you can imagine. And I thought, well, this is what you do. Like Anita Morjana dining me. I just have had a Super Bowl level NDE. Now I write my book and launch my career. But little did I know, I was about to die last February. I got so gravely ill in a different way. My brain was shutting down and I was collapsing like I was shot in front of my kids, or they'd find me on the floor in front of the freezer that's just hanging open. And it was so scary. I was like, I could kill them in the car. My parents had it come up for months and take care of my children. And I thought I was going to die in February, but I channeled, Source directly. And I was like, I did not come all this way for this to happen again. And I had never been angrier, even though to me, Source is my highest self, is me. I had never been more angry. I'm like, people don't go through this twice.
Correct.
This is, that's BS. I don't care what was in my plan before coming in, whatever. But that was another non-Confucius moment.
Well, you know what? The thing I can tell you, what it sounds like,
yeah.
So each of us have different experiences in life. And to me, it seems like, God used you for a specific purpose. I mean, there has to be something behind this. And it's a good purpose, even though you may not know, or we may not know the complete understanding. He's not going to go out of his way to put you or anybody through this without an end reason. And it may even be getting this message out there. I mean, this is an absolutely fantastic story, completely.
Well,
and I think
what you just said is really beautiful, Elijah.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's I know some people are very reluctant, but I know people that were always reluctant until it happened to them. And boy, did they change overnight. They went from skeptic to not skeptic anymore. I'm like, yep, it's real.
Yes. And I can tell you actually that the experience that happened, for the past year and a half, it's like, oh my God, it actually took care of I did not realize this, but I only had one worst fear left.
What was that?
And it happened, which was the exodus of my remaining friends. Like 5 years of grave illness takes a toll. And through this process of getting so sick and being in so much physical pain, being, long story short, with this second go around, I was doing everything with an engine made of self-hate.
Yeah.
I mentor women, and I'm writing this book, but I always knew, how do I finish it? I can't lie and claim self-love. And the irony of my last attachment being losing all my friends, the irony of that creating self-love was my own personal deepest miracle. Because the entire time I've been doing this, I was secretly hoping, I will grind this out.
Yeah.
I'm very loyal, and I thought the best I could hope for was to feel neutral about myself. And that was my fantasy. And I even had my doctor, tell me you don't produce either serotonin or dopamine. And they didn't know what to do with me. And they wrote this foundation that specializes in this. And they literally wrote back and they were like, we had no experience. We don't know what to offer. We've never experienced someone who produces neither. And, hearing that confirmed my worst fear, that I'm always going to feel like I'm always going to hate myself. It's just like it's too deeply ingrained. And so when I finished grieving the loss of my friends and having come through the actual death part of it, because God said, give me 60 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, damn, thank you, an answer. But God doesn't need 60 days. I needed 60 days to keep my fearful thoughts at bay well enough to receive the miracle. So I kept dying worse each day, and there was 4 days left. And by this point, I'm like F-bombing God, right? I'm like, you're going to have to pull an elephant-sized rabbit out of my ass at this point.
Yeah.
And with 4 days to go, it went from my parents totally accepting the fact that I was going to die to just full restoration.
Wow.
With 4 days to spare. And then with the friends thing, that actually happened more recently.
Mm-hmm.
But after grieving them, I've been crying so hard. I stood up and I felt this huge blast of wind, just absolutely blast full body. And I quickly turned to the mirror because I wanted to see if my hair was moving.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just was hoping to see what is this? My hair was not moving. It was strictly a spiritual sensation. And I asked, I was like, what is this? What is this? And I had my first samadhi or bliss experience. I'm like, what is happening? What is this? And Wayne Dyer immediately came in and said, you dropped your last attachment. And then Archangel Michael said, no internal resistance.
Wow.
And that's how I I try to live my life. I think of myself and every action I take as like I'm an empty pitcher, and I take my marching orders from source, and I've made a pact with my guides that like our primary directive is to never miss like a breadcrumb from source. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
So that's kind of everything in a nutshell. It's very nutshell. But I guess I would just welcome any questions you have. You know your viewers, and
wow.
If there's anything I could say that would offer help in any way, as you know them best, I would really love to.
Well, the
to
thing
be of maximum service.
Well, first of all, I want to encourage you. You need to finish your book by all means, because this story is phenomenal. And I think this goes along with a huge part of the healing, you know, and I really do think this will complete the circle for you, because with everything that's happened, I think with the book and with getting your story out there, when people hear it, they will start to understand where you're coming from. And sometimes it's hard to relay that if people only know bits and pieces of everything that you went through. But I think once they see the whole bigger picture, I think it'll click for them. So I really think this is meant to happen. I think things are actually going to go in a fantastic direction for you. Things do take time. Things can take years. Like another gentleman, Andrew, I talked to, you know, it took him 20 years to come out with his whole story. And, you know, things happen for a reason. God puts you into positions, I think, that are tough, but nothing you can handle. But he puts you in the right place at the right time. And I think right now is the right time for you.
Totally.
And this is just...
You know, actually...
Yeah, go ahead.
This reminds me of kind of one of my own personal tenets, I guess you would, like one of my foundational beliefs is saying what you're just saying, which is everything that happens to us, with like everything that happens for us, not to us. And that is like the foundation. That's like a foundational level part of my belief. And that is very hard to hear, especially when somebody's in anguish or a dark night of the soul or experienced a tragedy or illness. Like, it's really hard to hear that when you're in the middle of it. It does not make the suffering go away.
Yeah.
But I have been through, at this point, so many Phoenix things. And each and every one, as gruesome as they've been, have done exactly as you described. They have completely revolutionized my life each and every time. But it's hard to hang in there. You know, it's hard to hang in there when it's that hard.
Well, you know what?
And so for anyone listening who is struggling,
well, I can tell you this.
You know, if you can just hang on.
So this is kind of off topic. So I was in the military and I suffer from PTSD. And I don't talk about it a lot because a lot of people can't relate to it. But what I do is, I've been distant from people. People have distanced from me. But, you know, I've had this for going on, well, it's been over 10 years now. But I'm starting to understand, okay, how can I use this for a better purpose? So what I do is ultimately I can't control what anybody does. And neither can you, because we're each our own individual person. But you can take that energy and try to turn it around for the better. And I think, going back to God really quick, you know, he's not going to put you in a position that you ultimately can't come through. Things will be a challenge. Things aren't meant to be easy in life. And, sometimes he wants you to not, how can I say this, not pull your weight, but he wants you to see that, you know what, you can overcome this. You are going to have people in life that will distance or, move on, but you know what, that's, you can't control that, and there's people that love you, that care about you. But just to go back to what I was previously saying, you and I do have a lot in common, because even though I haven't gone through the experience you have when it comes to those relationships and personal vendettas or whatever it is, we do have that in common. And what I use my issue for the better, and things start opening up doors, etc. That's that's all if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. And what you've just described is truly the process of alchemy.
Yeah.
Like, we are meant to face and walk through and ultimately embrace and integrate these challenges, because that is the shit that will be within our power to turn to gold.
Definitely.
And using that is your most precious gift. Your deepest contrast is always the source of your most powerful potential contribution. That is alchemy. You have turned your struggles into helping others do the same.
And
that's inspired work.
And you know what? I don't think we're given anything that we can't overcome. We are tested. I know that for a fact. We're being tested. And if it's something you can't handle, it's not going to be given to you. And at first, it's going to seem like you can't do anything about it. But given time, you'll see the pieces come together the way they're meant to be. And I think with these experiences that you had, just the fact that you had it, that in itself is an amazing thing. That means, you know what, God's looking after you. But at the same time, he wants you to prove to yourself and show you that, hey, you can overcome these challenges. And I think that's a real positive thing. Sure. Most definitely.
So one of my guides, Wayne Dyer, used to always talk about emotional mastery being the one shared purpose of every being incarnated on earth. And to that end, it really is true. Like, Earth School is all about living these fleeting, temporal lives and navigating the insanely infinite kaleidoscope of human emotion.
Yeah.
That's the school we're in. It's really like relationship building. Like, every relationship, especially your closest ones, are your greatest workshops for spiritual development. And this might sound a little hard to hear too.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
But what I've also come to realize is, because they've shown me that not only are your closest family members and most beloved friends, not only are those people your closest soul family, but so are your greatest enemies. And it actually takes a huge degree of love, like in the pre-incarnation huddle we do, where we kind of discuss these are the themes I want to explore. And we kind of, cast our lifetime. Like, okay, so you'll help me in this way to explore this theme and so on. The people who have caused us the greatest pain are just as close soul family as the people who contribute the most valuable comfort. It takes somebody who does love you that deeply to come in and offer their role as someone who they know will wound you deeply. And I mention this because knowing this is how I was able to forgive my ex-husband. And forgiveness is one of those super unsexy topics.
Yeah.
Many people want to skip straight to how do I open my third eye? But you, all of you, your bones, your layers of energy, the negative space within you, everything about you is the divine instrument. And if you're hoping to get clearer messages to improve anything in your life or get guidance or wisdom, having some kind of like emotional junk in the trunk, negative emotions that we've stuffed or we've forcibly ignored or it's like too painful to go there, that's the work, the real work of being able to receive more synchronicities and to perceive yourself as having an easier time of communing with your guides, for example.
Yeah.
If somebody is holding on to a deep resentment or a deep sorrow, there really is no way around but through. And that's kind of difficult. It's a kind of difficult pill to swallow. But I know from experience, and I said it to God, I was like, God, I want to forgive John, obviously for the sake of my children, but even more selfishly for my own peace of mind, because I did not want to live in fear for the rest of my life. And I kept saying, I just don't know how this is going to be possible. I don't understand, but please just don't give up on me. Please.
Well, you know what, if I could say
4 years. Yeah.
If I could say something really quick, I'm so glad you brought up the thing about forgiveness, because forgiveness is very difficult. And I've noticed people that, it's not that they don't want to forgive. It's hard for people to forgive, especially when specific things happen. But what you notice is I'm not just saying I'm sorry. I mean, in your heart, if you say I'm sorry and you forgive that person. Now, I'm not talking about if they did an action that's not good. That's one thing. I may not agree with the action, but I can forgive the person, okay? Because we're all human. But what I've experienced and have noticed, and you have, I'm sure as well, once you forgive somebody, all of a sudden, all that, everything you've been storing inside lifts. Any, the burden, the weight, because it's hard for you to move on and forgive yourself for anything if you can't forgive other people.
Yes. Forgiveness, like, this is literally how important it is. It is like, this is my own nerdy term for it, but it is like a spiritual enema.
Yep.
It really is.
You're absolutely right.
You want to think of yourself as a pipe, a small section of the biggest, widest, cleanest and unobstructed pipe that you can be, so that you're able to glean the wisdom of your eternal self. Like you, Elijah, are sitting here.
Yeah.
But the reality is you are at the very tip of an upside down iceberg. The absolute majority of you is still, as we speak, anchored in spirit. And real wisdom comes from that portion of ourselves, our timeless selves. And a lot of people, I think, especially in this day and age, like, would love greater clarity, would love to have a greater sense of peace and ease. And there really is nothing more self-loving or self-honoring than forgiving. It's for you. And I want to say this too. I work with so many people, and the number one request that people's spirit guides always have is, please ask for help as much as you can. You are never in this alone, only if you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to say. Forgiveness is so powerful. And you may want to start at the place where you simply ask your guides or God or Source or Allah or whomever of saying, I know I'm not willing to forgive so-and-so, but please help me find the willingness. Start there.
Yeah.
Start just to pray for the willingness to be willing to forgive.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. So, and I haven't told you this yet. I completely agree with you. I'll tell you personally, I am a Christian. But regardless of what faith, what you believe, I think this applies to every walk of life, regardless of your background, your beliefs, your faith. This is something that it crosses the whole spectrum. The whole spectrum.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about truth? It often does.
Yeah. It sure does.
And there's this, have you ever heard of Neil Donald Walsh? He wrote a series of books called Conversations with God.
Oh, I've heard the name. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm having one of those nerdy brain fart moments.
Oh my God, no.
But no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and he used a metaphor that I never forgot. Over 20 years ago, he wrote this. But he compared a civilized civilization to a tree.
Yeah.
Where you'll never see warring branches of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how nonsensical would that be? And to take that on personally, I think is really powerful, because that is actually, like, the image of God is like a tree too, in the sense that, like, it doesn't matter. You could be Mother Teresa or you could be Jeffrey Dahmer, but if you stand under a tree in the heat of summer, you will be gifted shade.
Yeah.
The tree does not, like, make a character judgment and, like, curl back its branches for Jeffrey Dahmer. And that's, like, my real message, really, is that, like, if I could do anything, just one thing on this earth, it would be to lessen or soften or ideally obliterate any fear regarding God. There is nothing to that energy except impossibly unconditional love, which is kind of like what I was saying before, which I get so much heat for, like knowing in the moment I could have just murdered 10 people.
Yeah.
So if that were to happen, like that's my dream. God knows it. Like my dream is to even, if I could just get one person to question and maybe consider rethinking what their higher power looks like to them, mm-hmm. and freeing themselves of any fear, because that is a human contraption. It is not real. And that's also where getting comfortable in periods of uncertainty comes in.
Yep.
And like, I kind of try to think of those times as, okay, cool. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be great because it's going to be guided by the wisdom of my higher self.
Yeah.
And so that connection is so amazing. It opens you up, to just be a better and wiser and more efficient and effective and loving and productive person, just across every category. But it can only be found by going within. And I think that's another thing. A lot of people have, I'm taping a series, a playlist, which is going to be like myth-busting meditation. There's so much out there that I think intimidates people, because meditation is often presented as something where you're supposed to stop thinking. And it really bothers me when I hear that talked about, because it's like, we are humans. Our mind is constantly narrating.
Yeah.
The goal is to be the sky, and your thoughts are the weather passing by. Like, even a hurricane is not going to scar the sky. But that's a better way of thinking about meditation. If somebody out there wants to try it, forget the notion that you're going to stop thinking. Not unless you've suddenly turned into an android. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you. Well, the fact you said android brings out my nerd self. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I know. I tickled your nerd brain, Linda.
But yet I'm talking to you on an iPhone.
Yeah. Did you watch Small Wonder growing up, or am I like so much older than you? Oh my God.
Well, I am 38 I'm 38 years old.
Oh, you don't look it. Okay, so you totally will remember. Remember Small Wonder, Vicky, the android? Oh my God.
You know what? Hold on. I'm going to Google really quick.
It's so cute.
Small Wonder.
It was like one of my favorite shows.
Small Wonder.
Small Wonder, Vicky.
Oh, yeah. Like I remember now.
Remember?
Yes.
I love that show.
I remember.
And actually, that actually brings me to another point, which people might find interesting, is I remember being up there while merged with God, thinking, it hit me. I had a realization that hit me in the moment, because I was like, how is this level of unconditional love even possible?
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the realization came to me is that everything's a spectrum. And so on the one side, we have sentient, we have the God that like people would say is just so loving, whatever. That's sentience. That's emotion.
Yeah.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum is non-sentience, or an easier way to consider it may be logic. And my mantis guide, for example, that race of beings is non-sentient. And I realized, and afterwards I was like, why were you surprised by this? God is all, like capital A, all. But God is all.
He's everything.
The full spectrum of everything. And so he's just as non-sentient as he is sentient. That was a realization that hit me in the middle of that exchange with him. And then afterwards I was like, duh, wait, why should that surprise you? But it did in the moment, like realizing that. Like, there is nothing that is not God. You know what I mean? It's just, God is the singular compound to all the universes, including me and you,
Well, that's exactly right.
Think, and I hope it's good news,
Well, you know what? Someone told me a good quote. They're like, I can't comprehend God. And you know what I told them? Yeah. If I could comprehend God, that's not a God I want to worship. You see what I'm saying? Because God is so everything. So it's like
we use words to close this because we have to, but like, it's impossible. Yeah. It's impossible to fathom still, like, with my experience. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything extra. Who knows? Like, I kind of get a sense there's like a mother God and a father God.
Yeah.
It seems like almost with that womb space and those like yin and yang, like the womb and then the sun rays being yang. And I don't know, is there some kind of other energy that is the union of those two? I don't know. I have no idea. Like, and so I love that you say that. I always will say that. Like, I hold everything as hypothesis because our experiences change from moment to moment, and so does our wisdom,
Yeah. I'll tell you what, this has been a fantastic talk to have with you.
I know, and I had so much fun talking to you earlier too. We are peeps.
And you know what's funny? I would like to have a follow-up interview with you again, because this has just been absolutely phenomenal. Just speaking with you on.
Oh my God, I'd love to. I'm with you. I'm like with you. Everything that you like, I like. Yeah. Just know that we are geek twinsies.
That's awesome. But I actually have no further questions for you. Is there anything else you want to say?
I guess if anyone out there does relate to feeling different, feeling like they don't belong or anything, like, just know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And, oh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, this was so cute. So, do you know Dolores Cannon? Do you know of her? She's passed away.
Dolores Cannon. Let me Google this again.
Okay. Okay. So when I was getting water, right before I called you.
Oh yeah, the American hypnotherapist, right? Yeah, I recognize her.
Yes. And she was so funny. She straight up popped up in my kitchen and was like, "You will mention me." And I was like, "Yes, I will."
You just did.
Not a problem.
You just
and
did.
So for anyone, like, especially for people who are like interested in this and interested in extraterrestrial, and all this sort of thing.
Oh gosh, you said
are unequaled.
You said extraterrestrials. That's one of the shows I'm going to be doing. I am so fascinated in UFOs.
Oh, you got it. I'll do
gosh.
That with you. I would love to host that one with you. I'm like,
well, then let's do it, girl. Let's do it, Susan.
We should. I know.
Let's do it.
I have many experiences with them.
That is awesome.
Very many. Yeah. And Dolores Cannon, like, all of her books, I mean, they're just extraordinary. She's like such a badass. And she really connects with your viewers. Like, that was so funny. But she was like, you will insert me in there because there are people who, like, you know, we need to be connected.
Yeah.
Like, specifically in your audience. So I almost forgot that. That would not have been good.
No, well, thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to go through her stuff later on tonight.
Yeah. Oh my God, you will love it. You will love it.
I know I will, because that's one of those nerdy but awesome topics that we all. Nerdy and detail. Like totally. Like, you should also read the book, The Martian. That's another one of my top favorites. Well, I've seen the movie, the one with oh my gosh, what's his name?
I know,
Come on, what's his name? Matt Damon. Oh, that was so cool. And I was like, where did they film that?
Like the Hallmark card version. The book is like nerd heaven. It's like the Contact book, where like it's even way more into the science of everything. It's like you have got to trust me. Oh my gosh. Like, the juicy details of nerddom in the books over the movies is like an avalanche. You will freak out.
Wow.
I'm telling you, you will be like the happiest person. And also, Contact is so old, you could probably find it for like $1.50.
Here's what's funny.
Like, used on eBay.
I own it. I bought it on iTunes. It's part of my collection. And another good one was Interstellar. That was an awesome movie.
Oh, one of my top 5 favorite
movies. Yes, ma'am.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? I own it. I love it. We would be really good movie watching friends too.
Oh yeah. Good stuff.
Like, for sure. For sure.
Well, Susan,
I really had the best time. Thank you. And I feel like anyone who likes you, I like them. So I'm very, very happy we got to do this together.
I'm so happy as well. I know for our listeners that don't know, Susan and I have been chatting back and forth for a little while, getting this set up. And she was kind enough to hop on board with this. And we are going to be giving you all of her information for her site, all the information about her down in the description. But I would like to tell the users, please share this video. She's also going to host it on her YouTube site as well. So check that out. But Susan, when we get done, don't hang up, because I'll chat with you for a minute off the air. But I really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day to speak with us on your experience.
I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, this is by far the best interview story I have heard. And
oh, yay! Oh my God, that's so great. Thank you for that compliment.
It's fantastic, and you better finish writing that book. I mean, I am going to be messaging you, hounding you on your progress.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. Like, I know now I can finally write the ending, because I was like, I've been budging around. Like, I can't lie. So, like, how can I end this freaking book? That's awesome.
Well, you know
Thank you so much.
So I'll be chatting you on the side, and, you have somebody here who's supporting you. A lot of people are supporting you. You may not hear from them, but we got your back on this. So if you ever need motivation, hey, even though we don't know each other personally, you know what? I feel like I've known you forever now, because this is
totally.
Because we're both nerds. We're both into the same type of topics. And but I want to.
Now that your guides are sitting in my copper pyramid with me right now, like, I know we'll be continuing to talk, because they're really digging this, like, bat line.
You know it.
They're like, this is like, we've got a bat line to our boy. It's pretty cute.
Oh yeah. Well, Susan, do not hang up. I'll chat with you in a second here, but I appreciate your time again. Good. So thank you very much.
You too. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Hey, everybody. That was Susan Dyer. What an amazing story she had. We're going to link all of her information down below in the description. Also, we're going to have all of her website and YouTube channel information, and anything else she provides. Check it down in the description. Also, follow her and subscribe to her on her YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us for this episode with Susan Dyer. And until next time, I am Mr. Cyber. Talk to you later.